Filing system. Just sorry,
Continue. Go ahead.
just wondering what would happen there because I also had something going on my other screen over here as well at the same time. Okay, yeah, where was I? Yeah, so I'm well, to explain who I am, start again with that. I'm the creator of the Rapid Trait Profiling System, and I'm a profiling and communication specialist. My whole business is in helping people to understand each other, to be able to build stronger relationships. Now, whether that be with finding the right partner, raising your children, in workplace relationships, in sales. Because at the end of the day, everything we do in life is based on relationships. In business, when people ask us, well, what do we bring to the table in your products and services? The only answer I can give to that one is I just bring the damn table. In other words, the relationships, you put everything onto that. You've got to have good products and services, but if you don't have build relationships, you'll never get a chance to show how good your products and services are. You've got to be able to build relationships. You've got to have good products and services. You put all that together, but the relationships always comes first, and that's my focus in business and personal life.
Thank you for that. I don't know if you saw me, I kind of chuckle when you said that you bring the whole table. Reminds me of that quote online that I am the table, right? I don't bring it, I am the table. What does that mean when you say that you bring the table when it comes to helping people learn more about themselves and relationships?
Well, as I say, well, when people are saying, what do you bring to the table, products and services? Well, mine is the relationships. And so therefore I'm bringing the relationships to the area, which therefore that is the table we bring to it. But where I help people in personal life, for instance, is there's a lot of parents out there who don't understand their children. And I've just had one of people I profiled his son when he was 5 and his daughter when she was 7. He's just telling me what they're up to today, 11 years later, from what they found out in the first profiles I gave them. And they couldn't build a relationship with his son. There was issues around that. He couldn't understand him. I could see he had a music trait. I told him to cultivate that. They've created a great relationship around that, dancing around the house, singing and carrying on. His daughter, I could see some issues that were going to be problems at school, and they were starting to be issues. Told him how to cultivate those. She's now, or she was at the age of 13, was running her own podcast. At the age of 18 now, she's just been accepted to 3 different universities in the United States for a full scholarship. And she's picked one in Minnesota that she'll be going to. And so, change their lives completely. Then I get the people who are going, right, well, I've got issues with my partner. We had a great, loving relationship when we started, but we don't understand each other now. So by talking to them about the traits they've got, they understand each other more effectively. They bring that passion back into their relationship. Then in the workplace relationships, how do you get your teams working together? Because we don't create teams through people who are the same. We make create teams through people who are different to each other because everybody brings something else to the table, so to speak. So when they do that, they need to be able to understand each other because the people who love doing the stuff that you like to do, not worth working with them because you're fighting over who's going to do it. But the people who would like the stuff that you don't like doing, they're the ones you want to give that work to, and therefore you want them in your team. But then how do you talk to those people and understand them? If you're selling to somebody, how do you have the conversation going so you make that connection? How can you find out what their emotional outcome is that they want? How can you help them save time? How can you help them make and save money? How can you find out the problem they have so you can become a problem solver instead of a salesperson? And then how do you remove their worry and stress? All of that through the relationships that we're able to build and the conversations we have.
What do you think are then some of the obstacles that people are facing when it comes to building the type of relationships you just described?
Well, main thing is a lack of communication. It just puts it down to that. It's also that we expect other people to be like us. So when we talk to somebody, we talk to them with the same amount of, information. If I need a certain amount of information to make a decision, I'm going to give that same amount of information to somebody thinking that that's how they make a decision. So we're mismatching our conversation styles, our communication processes. So the moment we're able to realize how theirs differs and change the way we like to speak to them in that particular moment, it's a case of tuning our transmitter into their receiver. When we go to a radio station, we know what its frequency is and we want to listen to it, so we tune our receiver in. But when we want to get a message across to somebody, we have to know what their receiver is, and then we tune our transmitter into that. So we need to be able to read the other person and know how much information to give them. So if I may, looking at you, I know you like the overview first of all. And once you got that, then you'll ask questions if you're interested, and we go into a conversation. I'm more analytical, so I need a lot more information to make a decision. So when I start talking, well, what I need to hear from somebody, I'm going to deliver that. The end result is you're either going to switch off or you're going to try and get me to move on, finish my sentences off and get me to finish, or just give me say yes, yes, yes. And they're going to be counterfeit yeses, not real yeses. So I'm not doing you a service. I'm not showing you respect by not talking to you in the way that you need to be spoken to. This is what it's all about. If I can read somebody, I'm respecting them, I'm connecting with the way that they need to be spoken to and treated, and then I've got the opportunity then to create a relationship.
I love when you do that because I think I said this the last time. You are spot on when it comes to your analysis of me. Like, I need as much information as possible before I could go left or I can go right, or I'm
Mm,
just going to stay there and just say, hey, Alan, give me more. Is that then, actually, let me take a step back before I ask that question. So if one of the problems in general that people are facing is the communication piece, and if I'm a type of person that I need as much information as possible, then my partner would have to be someone that either respects that or that's the same. Because if I'm with
mm,
someone that doesn't want to give information or just can't, we're gonna have problems. Would that be accurate?
mm. That's exactly right. See, it's always matching the way that we like to be spoke, or the way we're speaking to the way the other person needs to hear it. See, I know that you also, it's how things feel inside. So when you're thinking about things and you got an issue, you want to be left alone. Now, if your partner is somebody who is really caring and everything else, but also is somebody who likes to express outwardly, they're going to be asking you what's going on. And because you want to be left alone to work on it, you start pulling away. Next thing you know, they start because they're more in their head thinking about things and expressing themselves. They start to feel that something's going on. It's like a bit of a joke that was floating around Facebook there at one time. The woman's sitting up in bed, the husband's lying there asleep. In the bubble around her, and what she's thinking about, the story's going on about how she's worried about him and everything else. And as it goes further and further, she builds up this story of where he's having an affair and she wants to kill him. And all he's thinking about is, I'm hoping that noise coming from the car is not the diff, it's just the exhaust pipe. And so mismatching because he's pulled away, he's thinking about his problem. She's not talking in the right way, not asking the right questions. So if your partner is somebody who is wanting more information to find out what's going on, instead, if they turn around to you and say, well, look, I can see that you've got something on your mind, just quickly, is there anything that I've got that I've done? If you said no, anything I can help you with? And if you said no to that, they know that you need to work on it. They just said then to you, okay, I know you need to work on this. I'll leave you alone to do that. But then they'd add to it so that you know they still care, they haven't given up. When you got it to a point where you can share it with me, can you come back and tell me because I care? You then go away and think, oh, great, now I can really concentrate on this without this, what I class as nagging coming at me. And in the other way around, they like to express themselves. So you've only got one question for them, and that would be, I can see that something's going on. Do you want me to fix it or do you want me to listen? If they want you to fix it, it's either something that's come up that they think you can fix, or you screwed up in the first place and they want you to fix that. Or the other side of it is that no, they just want you to listen. So then you go, okay, I'll just hold your space. And because they've told you it's got nothing to do with you, you know it's got nothing that you should be taking on. If you care about your partner, you just sit and listen to them. They get it out of their system and they're over it. Everything's back to normal, and you got that loving relationship again. So it's just picking up those little bits of the differences. The traits that bring us together are usually opposites. They're exciting. But as we get used to the upside of the traits, we then notice the downsides. And that's where we make our problems. That's why we think that our partners changed, but they haven't. Our perception of what's going on has changed. And once we realize that, we can change ourselves, but we can't change the other person. So I always prefer if something's going wrong, I'm the one responsible. Because if I want to improve this situation, I can do something about it.
You mentioned a few things there. You mentioned problem solving, fixing the problem, and you mentioned safe space.
Hmm.
Some people will say that the former, fixing something, that's more of a masculine type of thing to do. More
mm,
men are maybe prone to
mm,
that. Some people say holding safe space, that more women, feminine energy, are prone to
mm.
that. If we need both then, and communication is maybe the root of many of these problems, not all, how can then we identify what the other person needs from us if communication is a struggle between both people?
Well, when it comes down to, as you said, male, female, but there are a lot of men who need to actually vent as well. There are women who will talk also about the feelings that they can't handle, so they want to fix problems. So it comes down to the facial features that tell us that. As soon as we look at the facial features, and if we think about it very quickly, what we feel inside, we express outwardly. And if we're thinking outwardly, we're pulling expressions after expression, we're pulling the same expression over and over, we're going to create ridges and crevices on our face. Those ridges and crevices then become a roadmap of how we like to think and process. So if you can see those facial structure, we know exactly how our partner likes to think and process. And we go, okay, then I know in this situation they're going to do this. Therefore, if it's going to develop into a problem, I need to do this instead. And we can then change the way in which we communicate. And that's how the connection is made. It's made very quickly. But where we used to have a whole set of traits that were male and a whole set of traits that were female, with the change in roles and everything else, there's been an intermingling of them. So we get a lot of guys that need to vent. In fact, was in a car with one day with a guy who was a negotiator and a mediator, and he was talking about a problem he was having. He went off on a tirade about the issue that was going on. And so when he finished, I just let him go because I knew he needed to vent. At the end of it, I just said to him, "Well, can I ask you another question?" And he said, "What's that?" So I asked him exactly the same question I asked him in the first place, and that is, what are you going to do about the problem? And then because he'd vented and got off of his system, he just put this layer of things he was going to do in a structured order. Problem was solved. I didn't need to fix anything. I recognized from the way he was talking, he just needed to vent. So I didn't jump in. I refrained from, because, I had been a fixer all my life. I raised three boys on my own. There was all those sort of things that were going on. And so with doing all of that, I just realized that I need to step out of what I'm doing and find out what the real situation is because the problem will be solved faster. And that just came down to that.
Yeah, to your point, I used to have a friend that he was someone that needed that space. Vent, vent,
Mm,
vent, and vent.
mm,
And one thing that I learned is that one, I need to show up in the way that he
mm.
needs me to show up for him, not
Yes.
showing up for me.
Mm,
And one of the struggles that I realized when I was trying to do that was you want the best for your friend, your
mm,
partner, your family member. Alan, I want the best for you as well.
mm.
But what happens sometimes is that what you think is best for them may not be what's best for them. It may actually be
Exactly.
something worse, right? Not necessarily the
Mm,
end of the world, but it could be, let's say you think it's a nine from your perspective, but to them, it's a four.
mm.
When it comes then to us trying to understand what our partner needs from us, what are some of the work that maybe we need to do on an individual level, maybe separate from our partner, so we can get comfortable in knowing that we need to show up in the way they want us to show up?
Well, one of the things is knowing, you don't have to go into a lot of self-development and things like that. It's more about self-awareness. And it's being aware of what pushes our buttons. How do our personality traits work? I've got some traits which are real doozies. They're great when it comes to the upside of the traits, like finding errors in things and everything else. If it's black and white, yeah, I'll find it really quickly, just like the click of the fingers. But in relationships where it's intangible, they can be a real problem. Well, as I've said before, I've been through two divorces and a lot of broken relationships. I know what part I played in those now. Whereas before, I was always blaming my partners for being the problem. Now I realise, yes, they had their part to play, but I also had mine, and I have realised what that was now. So that self-awareness became important to be able to understand that. The best place to start, understand your personality traits. That shows you how you respond in different situations. You know what's going to trigger you. So if I know the upside of my traits, I know where my strengths are. I know the things I should be doing, where I'm more productive, the things that are going to keep me happy and healthy. And I also know the downside of my traits, the things that will trigger me when I get stressed. So if I know the things that trigger me, I know what environments to stay away from. I know how to pre-frame things. If I'm going to a conversation with somebody, I'll pre-frame the conversation with them, knowing that somewhere through that conversation, something that might have triggered me in the past won't get the opportunity to trigger me now. And so that's the best thing I can do for the other person is to show up as my best personal self. That's how I can help them the best. And then from there, once I've done that and I'm sitting in that situation with somebody, my whole focus now is on them. It's no longer on me. Because
Alan,
most of us want to
what
help
if I
somebody,
like
we jump
being
in.
what if I like being in those places that trigger me?
Well,
Because you know there's
then
some
you're a
people that
masochist.
that do, right?
Yeah. There's some people out there who, and again, that comes down to some of their belief systems as well. You find that some people who've been through, domestic violence or coercive control, their self-esteem is now damaged to a point that they don't feel that they deserve anything better. And so they end up repeating that behavior where they find another person in that who does that to them. It's helping that person understand that. See, by seeing somebody's strengths, and this is what I love doing what I do because a lot of people can't see where their strengths are. And when I'm talking to them and chatting, they find out that where their real strengths are and they see themselves in a completely new light. Because a lot of the times when people are in those situations, it's due to their self-esteem levels. And once we're able to help them understand where their strengths are, why they should not be tolerating things like that from other people, they'll step beyond that. And that's when they step into the role, they go out and they start helping other people in those roles. Because our self-esteem comes from being valuable. We all feel that to be loved, we need to feel that we're valued, that we have a place, that we contribute. We need to belong. Now, a lot of those people don't feel they belong. They've been cut off by the people who may have abused them, for instance. They're isolated because abusers work by the initial CIA. They charm, they isolate, they abuse. And they keep you in that state. They might throw a bit of K in their kindness, where they then make you feel that each time they strike and then they're soft and loving towards you, that it's your fault. You're isolated, so you're not going to have a very good self-esteem. So the whole thing is to help somebody to gain that self-esteem so they can see themselves who they really are and not this idea that they've taken on, which has been holding them back. And so a lot of people also look at, well, the unknown is scary. So yes, if I do this, I'll have a better life, but this crap life I've got at the moment, I've been living in that for a long time. I know how to survive in it, and they'll stay there as well. So again, being able to read people and recognizing we know the right way to actually start to approach them and to talk about things where they can then realize the strength that they have. Because I never tell anybody what they should be doing. What I do is I help them to realize what they should be doing. Because they take
The,
ownership of it, they will then live it.
the example you gave, CIA, charm, isolate, abuse,
Mm,
that reminded me of a couple years ago, I went to a meetup. It was
mm,
just a group of people that didn't really know each other. Sometimes you can have social influencers do it and so on. So I went there, and this was my first impression of these people. And I'm beginning to read the room, understand who's who, how people are behaving, the things that they talk about, the things that they say, and the things that they don't say because their face will reveal all. I remember seeing a group of people bullying this girl, telling her, "You can't sit with us, sit over there."
mm,
And I remember mentioning it to a woman at the time there. And she mentioned that, yes, it's bad, but she continued on. And then I began to be a little bit more observant. And I went and I said, the person that is the leader, or the
mm,
one that seems to be the focal point of this group, it's a few men. I'm like, they're pretty charismatic, they're pretty charming. She said, yes. And I was like, you guys call each other family and everything. And she's like, yes, they're not blood related, they're their chosen family.
mm,
I was like, do you guys hang out with anyone else? Like, no, we usually just hang out with ourselves. And, we don't like really new people, things like that. I was like, oh. I was like, and you guys give these men, and this is women, right? Mostly women.
mm,
And then there's a few men. I was like, and you guys give this man, this, or these two or three men, you guys give them money? She's like, yes. You pay for things? Yes. When they travel, you pay for the Airbnb and you give money for the flight. I was like, yes. Do you think you're being abused? She was like, no. I was like, okay. Do you think you're being taken advantage of? And she said, no. So I was like, okay. You have a daughter? She's like, yes. Would you want your daughter to be giving money that she's earned to men that she's just friends with? She's like, no. I was like, so why is it that it's wrong if your daughter was involved, but it's not wrong when you were involved? And she still couldn't see the connection. From your perspective, Alan, in general, I know you don't know the whole situation, but just from that example, what could be maybe in general some of the reasons why some people who experience that type of situation or something similar, they don't see the connection, even though if you give them an example of their child or their family member being in that, they can call it abuse, but it's not when they're in it.
When they say she's looking at her daughter, for instance, she's coming from the loving parent side of things, always wanting the best for her daughter, and also knowing that some people will take advantage, etc. So she doesn't want her daughter to go through that. But she doesn't feel that she's been taken advantage of because she feels that she's allowing this to happen. Whereas if her daughter was doing that, it would be done to her daughter. And so she can see that on one side it's being done to somebody, but on her side, it's not. It's something that she's choosing. And so that would be part of it. So she's not going to see that connection until if you said to, if you had her parent, her mother there and asked the mother that question, she would probably say the same thing about herself and the same about her daughter. And then if she actually could hear her parent, put her in the place of saying, okay, you're your daughter. And if you would say that to your daughter, that's what she'd do, what would your daughter be thinking of you when you're doing that? How would she actually listen to you? Because you're allowing that to do the same thing yourself, but you're telling her she shouldn't do it. How does that match up? But can you see that your daughter would see a problem with it? Why can't you?
So in some cases, it could be that because we're allowing these things to
Mm,
happen, we don't feel victimized because we still have
that's right. Yeah. We feel that
some
we're
sort
in
of
charge.
power.
Yeah, we feel that we're in charge of it. But you would know that when she looks at it from a daughter's point of view, she's from that higher view that she's looking down and she's seeing a daughter and she's seeing all the men around her. Whereas in her case, she can only see herself. She can't see the men around her. And so this is the thing is trying to get helping a person to be able to see themselves on the same level as when they're looking at somebody else in the same situation.
That can be scary then because you have a group of women who they don't see themselves as victim because they feel that they have a choice because they're
Mm,
allowing it. Whereas
mm,
if they're children, to your point, they have a higher because they're coming from a place of care and concern. I don't
mm,
want this to happen to my children, to my mother, to my whomever. Then
mm.
it's a different perspective. But for them, they're thinking that, well, I'm allowing it to happen and I can stop it anytime I want.
That's right. It comes down to they feel more empowered. So they're looking at it from two different viewpoints. The one they're looking at the external with their daughter, and then the other one they're looking internal on themselves.
When it
And
comes
so
to
it's
the families now, how does that impact the families then? If someone is unable to connect those two views.
well, we're trying to connect those two views, but you got the rest of the real family around them, like their siblings, their partners, etc. Then it's in the conversation for them to be able to realize, well, by doing this with these external group, how is that affecting the relationship with your immediate family? What is with all the stuff you're giving away to others? How is that affecting the people next to you? Are they you're taking away from them? If they've got a really rich family, well, that may not be a harder way going with that because there's plenty of money. But it's well, how much time are you giving away? How much your children you're not spending time with? That daughter you wanted to protect. What sort of time are you spending with her? So letting them see the bigger picture, it's bringing as much in as you can so they can see that because at the moment it's just her and it's the other men, and she can't see the difference. But when you incorporate others, you say, okay, well, you've got these people are not 100% of your time, but they're taking time because you've got your family and other people close to you. What are you taking away from them in that process? You know, thought of actually talking to your family about this and see what they think. Get now, if she's worried about a daughter, have that conversation with the daughter and see what the daughter thinks about her doing that and get the feedback from the daughter as well. Because you're going to make judgments and directions for a daughter. Well, What's the daughter feel about it?
That would be an interesting take, right? Like, give this, put the daughter, or let the daughter see it, or give her the
Mm.
example. Would you want your mother in this situation?
That's it.
But we
Even
want to do
ask
that
her.
in front of the
Mm.
mother, correct?
Well, you do first of all do it with the daughter because the daughter might just come back and say, "Hey, because she's got the same mindset as a mother, she might already be doing that with some of the friends around her. Therefore, she said, oh, that's okay." Because now she's relaying it to herself. But quite often, I'd have a quiet conversation with somebody, and so, in that conversation, just talk about the relationship with a mother, and bring it out slowly, find out and see there is a difference, and then go, okay, well, have you ever talked to your mother about that? Because it's really not my place to orchestrate something, get them together and start controlling it. It's more a case of getting people to think so that they take action on their thoughts. And so it's like with as I said, the mediator sitting next to me in the car. Instead of me turning around and saying, "Oh yeah, what the people have done, you carried on and built up," because we see it on Facebook every day. Somebody makes a comment, and now you've got two warring fractions. One side agrees with that person, everybody else is against them, and we've got this problem because everybody. The biggest problem is that when people have a problem, they used to say that a problem shared is a problem halved. No, it's not. A problem shared and action taken on it is a problem halved. But in most people react to it, and it's then magnified because you've got all this warring fraction. Whereas I prefer to turn around and say to somebody, "Well, look, if that's the situation, what are you going to do?" And ask them the question. So with this guy, instead of me jumping in and saying, "Oh yeah, you should have said this to him, you should have said that to him," I just hit him with the same question because I knew his energy had changed at that point. He got it out of his system. There's no way he could go back and repeat the same thing again. And I hit him with exactly the same question. "Well, what are you going to do about the problem?" And he went, "Oh, okay, got it." And he went, bang, 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 bang. These are the things I'm going to do. Constructive list of actions he was going to take. Next thing you know, he went and talked to the people that he had the problem with because he's now changed his energy. Conversation was completely different. He resolved the problem. Whereas if he'd gone in with the other one where if I'd supported his venting or he hadn't had the opportunity to vent, he would have magnified the problem. So again, it's a case of having that conversation with somebody, getting them thinking, and then get out of the way and let them do what they need to do. So it's not taking control, it's facilitating, it's supporting.
That question, what do you want to do about it?
Mm.
How much courage does it take to say it, and how much courage does it take to hear it?
Well, with some people, it might be pretty hard, but I've been through so many things in my life. I got to the point that there's not many conversations I can't have with people. And yeah, I've come up with some, I'm only 5'6", and I've come up with some guys who are well over 6 foot. I don't have a problem. I'll open my mouth up because I know that I'll usually trigger some thought because I find a way in which I'm not making an offensive comment towards them. I'm not challenging them, not in a way in which they can't see reason. I'll do it in a way in which gets them to think. And once they start thinking, we've changed the environment, we've changed the situation. I remembered when I was sitting down with a guy who worked with NLP, and we were doing a training course, and he pulled me aside, and I was sitting in a hotel, and right outside the window, the monorail went past. Well, he was talking to me. He's asked me about the breakup I'd had with my last wife and everything else, and we're chatting about that. And I was relaying the same story I relayed to everybody else because nobody had ever taken me to the next level. They'd all let me, talk about it. They'd all said how terrible it was and all the rest. Monorail goes past the window. He stopped right in the middle. I'm at the height of my emotional outburst about this, and he goes, "You ever been on the monorail?" I went, "What?" And he started talking about that. And then he took me straight back to where I was before. And he said, "Oh, where you were, what did you do after that?" I could not tell the story the same way again. My energy had completely changed. So in a lot of cases, to get people to think differently, it's just a matter of breaking the cycle, finding that point when it's really opportune to actually change the emotion, because then it changes the story. And as soon as they do that, they start thinking differently. Then they start questioning what they're doing. Then they start looking at, well, what can I do? And if you help them through that process, you just facilitate it, you don't control it, but you help them to see through the way through that, they make their decision on what they need to do. And once they take the decision, they will go and do it. It's like the difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation is something that comes from outside. It's like, you have to have a shower every day. So the end result, you need motivation over and over again because it's not yours. But inspiration comes from within inside you. When you comes from within inside you, you take ownership with it, and that's when you're more likely to do things. So all those motivational seminars and speakers and that from the past, the smart ones learned to change the way they were doing things to become inspirational coaches. So they brought the inspiration out of the person, not tried to put the motivation into them. And this is the same thing there. It's finding the way to help that person inspire themselves to take the action. Because once they decide this is what they're going to do, they've made the decision and no one's going to change their mind. Whereas if you
I had
tell
an
them this is what
example
you
of
should do, they
that.
won't.
Yeah, to
Mm,
your point, I had an example of that where I was giving constructive feedback to someone that I was coaching, and you can see that in their face, their emotions were they were dejected. They were feeling kind of bad because they knew what they had to do, but they wanted to perform better, but there was a block somewhere.
mm,
And this person was wearing a Marvel shirt, Batman. So I said that if you were to work this and do this behavior, I was like, you can become Batman. And the person
mm,
started to laugh. And they started to chuckle because they know I made observation to what they're wearing. And obviously, if you
mm,
have something on your shirt, you usually are a fan of it.
mm,
His energy changed. He's like, Train, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You don't have to worry about me. It was a totally different person. And to your point,
mm,
sometimes if you just interject a moment, instead of just beating the person down with a rolled
mm,
newspaper and just relate to them some
mm,
way and touch their emotions, the whole energy could shift. And he no longer was explaining how
mm.
he was explaining in the beginning. He was energetic, he was more
That's it.
involved.
Mm.
Why do we miss that in our interactions with people?
Well, we look at ourselves and that we don't like pregnant pauses. When there's silence, we feel we've got to fill it. We've got to jump in and say something. We look at situations from our point of view. We don't look at it from the other person's point of view. And that's where we go wrong. We see it on, as I said, we see it on Facebook every day, people picking up the other person's problem and then running with it and creating something that's worse than what originally was there in the first place. We're thinking that this job is going to be so hard. We've got to put all this effort in. We've got to be doing all these things ourselves. But then we realize that it's the simple answers. When there's a major hard problem, the answer is usually simple. It's not hard. So we look for a simple answer, and sometimes that might just be a question. As I said, when I said to the this mediator, well, what are you going to do? I asked him the same question again. I didn't have. We think we've got a big job to try and fix something. Well, I had a very easy one. Just ask one little simple question and then get out of the way and let it flow. And so making sure that we don't take it on ourselves to start with, that's one of the biggest problems. And we see it every day with people going, okay, such and such happened, and I got involved in this. Because if I'd said to him, well, okay, what about this thing? And what about that? And you should do this and you should do that. There would have been a lot of conversation, a lot of noise and everything else. We both would have been angry at the other people and everything else, and nothing would have been solved. The first thing was to realize it's not up to me. I don't have to fix this. All I have to do is hold that person's space, respond in the right way, and let it go. So I know that we have Are You Okay Day that comes around once a year. We go out and we ask people, are they okay, etc. Well, that should be every day of the week, every day of the year. And but what we do is we then go, well, I don't know what to say. If somebody says, if I ask them, are they okay, and they say no, they're not, what am I going to do? Well, sometimes it's just a matter of sit down, listen to them. If well, what's going on? They tell their story and you go, yeah, that must be hard. Simple little comments like that, not trying to fix the problem. But men probably find this the hardest because, as you said before, generally speaking, we are the problem solvers. And the women were the emotional side of things. We were the hunters, they were the gatherers. They had to be looking after the kids, the children, and the small items that we mainly fed on, while the men were out trying to find something larger to bring back the delicacy type thing. So we are different in the way we're wired. But as I said, there are some transfers going over now because of the change in societies over the generations. But we are different. Women were more emotional in the way they express themselves. The thing is, men are highly emotional, but we have been taught to shut it down. And that's why we don't handle it well. Once we started, and that's why the Campfire Project, when I created that and men started opening up, Men could see the strength they never saw in themselves in the past because now they were able to open up and see what they were capable of doing because everything else was shut down so tight they couldn't move. And then they started talking and realizing they can be just as emotional as a woman. They can have the same sort of conversations with a woman and really connect with them and everything else. At the same time, keep their identity as a man as well. And so they started to see more growth and strength they had in themselves that they couldn't see before. And you can't get somebody to realize that by telling them. You have to facilitate it so that they can see it in themselves. And it usually means by asking questions that aren't trying to solve the problem, but just asking them to think more.
Opening up conversation for a lot of people that's vulnerable. And you mentioned the Campfire Project. Speak to
Mm.
us about that and its impact on these men who are able to be completely vulnerable, open up in this way.
Yeah, well, so I realised how the Campfire Project started was because of all the men I was talking to in business. Most of them, I'd ask them, well, give us a word that would describe your home life and your personal life. And they would come back to me and say, well, look, we're confused or frustrated. And I'd say, well, explain what you mean. At home, as men, we were designed, especially Gen X, baby boomers, we were taught to go out from the family, work away from the family, bring the resources back and look after the family. So we showed our love by being absent. Today, we're told that we're physically and emotionally absent. And there's frustration now because unless you can work from home, you've got to go out to bring the resources in and you're not home. If you're home, you're not bringing the resources in, so you can't win. And that was causing frustration and even anger in some places and causing arguments within the household. In the workplace, gender equality and political correctness, all the men trying to do the right thing. But as they said, what we can say today, tomorrow, somebody's moved the goalpost, we get into trouble for. And this has been a problem. And that was causing anger in the workplace as well. So even bullying and things like that. So I realized that men needed somewhere just to be able to speak, to where they felt safe to be able to do that. It wasn't my job to make men feel safe. It was my responsibility to create a safe place where they could then give themselves permission to share their stories. And that's why I created the Campfire Project. But it wasn't just for men. I had women in there from day one because I've seen so many men's groups when men go away to it, they have a great time. They're all fired up. They go home, get hit in the face by the real world, and they're waiting for the next one to come, like motivational seminars. How many people become motivational junkies? They have a great time, they go home, then they're waiting for the next one because life's terrible again. So I realized I wanted women to be part of it. So I brought women into the group, but I only interviewed the men, then brought them into panel discussion. We talked about masculinity, femininity, drugs, alcohol, masturbation, you name it, we covered it. And in that, the women finally sent me personal messages saying, we love these guys. We have never heard men talk so deeply about their emotions. We didn't think they could do it. And I'm thinking, well, they never had the opportunity, but now they've got it. And at the same time, they said, well, they're so wise about how we can improve society. Can we get involved? And we great. Now it's time for you to put your hands up and join the one-on-ones. So the men led the way. The women then had the opportunity to hear how the men could speak before they and open up. Then the women came in, they told their stories, and the men started seeing similarities. The men started having conversations with them in the camp, in the panel discussions as well. So we had mixed panel discussions. We talked about menstruation, menopause, does size matter in the bedroom? No subjects being off the table. We've got a full range of different gender identities, religions, cultures, etc. in the group. We've never had any bigotry, sexism, or racism, and not once in any one of those conversations, over 700 hours of them, has anybody been disrespectful to anybody else. Because again, I haven't actually done anything other than create a safe place, and everybody else has done the work themselves. They have told their stories. They've started to see their own strengths. They've joined panel discussions. They've met other people of like minds. They've been able to open up more. When I go out bush with the Aboriginal community I'm involved with, we sit around the campfire project, about the campfire, I should say, in real life. And the conversations we have, there's nothing like nothing similar to anything you do down the pub or the sports field or anything like that. They're genuine, deep conversations. Nothing's off the table, and everybody talking with respect for each other. Everybody's listening, everybody's being involved. And that's why the Campfire Project came out of my experiences in that particular area. And that's why it's been so successful. Because men do want to share, they do want to open up, they do want to express their emotions. So if you create a safe place, they can then get rid of the old programming that's had it locked down and they can take the lid off and they can then bring it out. If you make it safe enough, it can come out with an outburst, but as soon as it's out and there's no criticism, there's no judgment, there's just this look of relief on the person's face, the man's face, and he goes, I'm in a safe place. So now the conversations then become that more genuine, and you got the venting out of the way. Now the conversations are much more constructive. It's so easy to do because instead of looking for a hard solution, I thought, how simple can I make this? I'm a simple person. So if I can make it simple, then others would probably appreciate it.
How important was it to have both aisles there, men and women?
Well, if it had just been the men's group, they would have felt great in there. But how would that affected their families? So when you help men to become better men, the recipients of that are their partners and the children of the community. So this is why I create the hashtag We Together, because it's until we come together, we can't solve problems. We're pointing fingers at each other, and you can see it around all the different groups. They talk about being inclusive. None of them are inclusive groups. They're what you call affinity-based groups or targeted groups. There's certain people that can come into it and they say, oh, we're all inclusive in here, but they've excluded the rest of society. And I went, no, I've got to create something that everybody can come into. Everybody has a place. Everybody's treated with respect, with total inclusion. And so for the Campfire Project now is ticking, I think the United Nations have 17 different sustainable development goals, and the Campfire Project is ticking five of those. My business, in the profiling side of things, ticks seven, which is pretty high for any group. And as far as the way the Campfire Project's being run, if you look at how to score a group for inclusion, it's got one of the highest scores in the world out of all the groups that are out there. And that was because I went, right, this is going to be totally inclusive. Nobody is put out. The only people who can't come into the group are those who will abuse other people. Two questions to get in. Will you respect everybody? Virtually asked twice, but in two different ways. People said, why the same question twice? I went, there's your two chances. There's never a third. So people can use zero tolerance to disrespect. And that's why not once have we ever had any disrespect within the group. And the men and the women, the bonds, the connections, the joint ventures that some of them created, the way they talk about each other when the other one's not there is exactly the same as the way they talk to their face. That's what I love about it, because when people start to see their own strengths and realize and appreciate and understand other people, all the different cultures, all the different beliefs, and listen to it to understand, not to look for the differences, but go understand why they are that way. Doesn't mean we condone the other person in what they might do, but we need to understand why they do what they do. Once we do that, we then have a chance of connecting with them. We're in conversation. If they are doing something that is wrong for society, they can start to see it themselves and go, oh, maybe I should be doing something different. And when they change at that point, there's somebody you really want in your environment because they fully understand it and they will continue going in that positive direction.
And you have what we'd touched on earlier, where you have someone that's looking to do the work and you have the safe space, and you've combined the two to create this beautiful, beautiful experience. Where do you want to take it going forward into the future?
Well, one of the things is getting more people to come into the group. It's not about growing the group in size, but it's the type of people we're bringing in. See, anybody can come in as long as they answer those two questions. Anybody can put their hand up and tell their story. Once they tell their story, then they can join the panel discussions. At the same time, if they happen to be a coach, they can come in, they can talk about what they do. If they pick up clients from other members, then great, that's between them. We don't make any money out of that. We're facilitating a safe place where people can get together and get to know each other and build connections. I'm also after people who run their own groups to come in. If they come in and tell their story, why they started the group, why it's running, what it's doing, we will promote that group to the world as well. We'll let other people know about them. But I also have an ulterior motive in getting those leaders of different groups into panel discussions. I know that anybody who's running their own group is going to go through tough times, like everybody else in the group. But their situation is, who do we turn to? Everybody they're supporting can turn to them. But I can't turn to somebody who's I'm supposed to be supporting because I know I feel like I'm dumping on them. So if that's the case, who can I turn to? Well, if they've met other group leaders from other groups and that in the panel discussions, got to know them, they're building some bonds. Now I've got some peer support. So my ulterior motive is not only getting them in, sharing their groups so everybody knows about the groups. We're creating a bigger global community with all these groups together, but I'm helping them to sustain their viability in that they've got support. If they're happy to come together, those people start working together, their groups are likely to come together and connect. So people in that group then connect with this group. When we go grow a global community large enough, we change everything. I think it was back in New York, well, it was decades ago. There were about 4,000 people who got together and meditated at exactly the same time. Crime dropped over that period. It was documented, research was done on it. The actual crime dropped at that particular time. We know that when you get to a certain number of people, you have what we call that critical mass and things will change. So if we want to get world peace, that sort of thing, we want to have people treating each other with respect. The more we can get people getting together and doing that, once we start a global movement, it just becomes a natural thing. We change in the way in which people think about themselves, or what we've actually put together is changing the way they think about themselves. I'm not doing it myself. It's just a facilitation that's actually done that. But we see people changing in the way they do things, have more respect for each other. Instead of passing somebody on the street, they'll stop and have a chat with them. They'll find out, well, anything I can do to help type thing. Find out if they're looking for something, they're lost or whatever, who they can go and find to get that support that they need. And quite often, when we do that, people say, well, why would I do that? Well, when you do it, you've just been paid. You get a feeling inside yourself of having, because it adds to your self-worth. So if you want to feel better in yourself, go and help other people. Like in business, we know, in networking and things like that, I always say to people, if you create a bank account, you can't take money out of it until you put money into it. So by helping other people build their businesses, it'll help you grow yours. You help other people with their issues, help them in the streets, talk to people, make connections with people. You'll then grow your connections in return. It has to come from inside of us, come out, given to other people, and then it will come back to us genuinely from them in the same way.
It's like taking from yourself the what you've done, the good you've done within yourself, and making deposits into other people's lives to compound the interest on that good that you're doing.
That's exactly right. And in that, there's going to be a certain percentage of the population because we know we've got psychopaths, sociopaths, narcissists, and Machiavellians, those dark psychologists, as they call them. Psychopaths are born that way, so there's nothing we can do with them. That's just the way they're wired. But sociopaths, narcissists, and Machiavellians were created. So we can reduce the number of those by the way in which we treat people, because somebody who has been felt like they've been pushed down all their life and everything else can move into one of those three dark psychologies. But if we change the way in which we've been treating them, we change their environment, they can't act the same way. So we can then prevent, in our own actions, facilitate that other people won't fall into that category. Their lives are different. Just that little bit of kindness we show to somebody, the smile we might give them one day, a genuine smile. So they tripped over and they've dropped all their stuff. Instead of smiling at that, which would take offence, going over, helping them pick their books up and everything else, and then smiling at them, then that's a completely different thing. So it's the timing of that. So just by showing that little bit of kindness to somebody will impact on them. It's like we smile at somebody, they'll smile back. Then they're likely to go and smile at the next person. That's how it becomes viral. An epidemic of people smiling. Just that one little act can then affect other people. That's going to come back to us through other people at some point. If we realize that if most people are looking for, if I do this, I want to get this immediate response or return. No. If I help somebody, I have got an immediate return because I feel better about myself that I've actually helped them. And then somewhere down the track, somebody else gives something to me that's been through that, passing it on type thing. I've got a double payment, but I didn't go expecting that double payment. It just came to me. Think, as I said, the compounding effect. That's how it all works. It's simple stuff, and anybody can do it. Even, you look at some of the gangs and things like that. Person is a combination of all these different things. So at times they'll be, to themselves, to each other, they're close, they're supporting, they're loving, and everything else. To the rest of society, they may not be. but they all, which just shows they do have the potential. And so if you want to see that potential come out of somebody, give a little bit out of yourself first. And then again, it's not that easy because I've been through some tough times. I've had a lot of anger towards people. As I said, 2 divorces and a lot of broken relationships. But once I understood myself, I understood why those things happened or what part I played in that. That diminished the feelings I had towards them. And therefore, that changed the way I was looking at things. It just flowed on. It made it easier and easier and easier for me to be able to be a little bit more altruistic towards people. Just become part of my natural way of being. It's just repetition, nice and easy.
Alan, let me ask you one final question, and I want to give you 3 wishes for this question. What are 3 things you wish people knew about understanding themselves and the role that they play in their life, and why?
Well, first of all, to know that they are responsible for everything good and bad that happens to them. When people do something around us, people may do something, but how we react, we decided to react. We chose. Everybody has suffered or insecure. Everybody wears a mask. Everybody pretends they're not wearing a mask. But the main thing is we are not just our childhood rewards and sufferings, but we are a combination of every event or how we've chosen to respond to every event in our life. So if I choose to operate in a certain way, I'm going to get a certain reaction. If I choose to operate differently, I'll get a different reaction. So then it's a matter of knowing that they have the choice to make the best decisions for themselves. They don't have to accept the bad. They can reject it and they can look at it in a more positive way. Something does something around me, I can look at it and go, I can see why they did that. I can understand why they did that. Hey, that disempowers them from having control over me. So that's some of the main things. I've probably thrown a couple of things in there, but it's a case of know yourself, know that you can make choices. It is your choice on everything.